And how I see it, this moment that we have on this earth is barely a breath between all that has been before in our life and all that will be. And this concept of the two great mysteries is universal. Everybody around the world seeks to explore where they came from and where we're going. They're the big questions. And if the questions were here now, why shouldn't they be there 40,000 years ago when our first art shows up in Europe? And that's fundamental to what Joseph Campbell was looking for. He said that there's one monomyth, there's one great story, the story of the hero.
Revolution Radio proudly presents, live from the heart of the Blue Ridge, Roanoke, Virginia. It's the Just Bernard Show with host Bernard Alvarez. Join Bernard as he shares topics that reveal the real matrix and empower your human experience, including world liberty, the esoteric, suppressed technologies, spiritual ascension, and human consciousness. Humanity has awakened, and our time has come to realize our full potential. And now, live from the Star City, your host, Bernard Alvarez.
And hello everyone, welcome to the Just Bernard Show here on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. Today we've got a really great show for you. We are going to be speaking with Bernie J. Taylor. He is the author of Before Orion, Finding the Face of the Hero. This is one of my favorite topics, by the way. This is why I'm really excited about today's show. As many of you know, one of my first influences in doing this work was Joseph Campbell. But anyway, so I wanted to tell you a little bit about my guest who's going to be joining us here today. Bernie J. Taylor. The hero's journey monomyth is at the core of stories worldwide among indigenous peoples, the ancients, and our modern society. Before Orion, Finding the Face of the Hero explores a deeper root for this monomyth by looking how hunter-gatherers viewed themselves within the natural and spiritual worlds through Paleolithic cave art from 40,000 years ago. Biological time author and naturalist Bernie Taylor proposes that select cave paintings are fundamental pieces in the human journey to self-realization, the foundation of written language, and a record of biological language knowledge that irrevocably impacted some of the artist's styles, religious practices, and stories that are still with us. Taylor addresses a profound archaeological elephant in the room by opening up an uncharted place in our history which points to the cultural ancestors of mankind. Before Orion will change the idea of who you think you are. So without further ado, let me welcome my guest joining me live from Oregon. You're in Portland, correct? Bernie, welcome to the show.
That's right, Portland, Oregon.
Welcome to the show. How are you? Thank you for joining us today.
I'm doing great. It's a late morning here at the moment.
Late morning, okay. And so, Bernie, tell us a little bit about why you got interested in this subject matter. I don't know about you, but when I was growing up, well, during my college years, Joseph Campbell and mythology was a big part of my education. I was very happy during the, early 90s, dating myself. During the early 90s, Harvard used to show the Joseph Campbell lectures on local, what do they call it, local access cable, you know? So I got really caught up in the whole idea of the hero's journey, and of course, you know, the hero of a thousand faces, and the power of myth with Bill Moyers was a big part of my early education as well. So to see you bring this information together and kind of tie it into the history of our art is ancient artworks, I should say, is really interesting to me. So I'd love to hear what brought you to this journey and what piqued your interest.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me on the show this morning. Well, I completely stumbled into this in terms of the monomyth, hero's journey, and the work of Jung. I was working on a follow-up book, about the biological clocks of animals and how they would be depicted in Paleolithic art. So going back to about 40,000 years ago. It follows another book I wrote, Biological Time, that was a very scientific book about how plants and animals are timed. And as I started working in this project, I started to see animals in a Spanish cave, the Spanish cave of El Castillo, that were Spanish animals, as well as animals that were not in Spain. And some of the animals that were not in Spain at the time were the giraffe, the African elephant, and the Barbary macaque. And I saw that there was a plate. There's the person that traveled, the person that actually taken a journey from Spain to Western North Africa. And as I started telling people the story of what I was working on, and people would say, this is sounding like the hero's journey. And I was familiar with the hero's journey from Star Wars, as we all are, as well as some of the work of Campbell, The Power of Myth. But I really wasn't looking at this whole concept in terms of the hero's journey. And in this process, I delved into the two great mysteries: what came before us, where we come from, and where we're going to go. And how I see it, this moment that we have on this earth is barely a breath between all that has been before in our life and all that will be. And this concept of the two great mysteries is universal. Everybody around the world seeks to explore where they came from and where we're going. They're the big questions. And if the questions were here now, why shouldn't they be there 40,000 years ago when our first art shows up in Europe? And that's fundamental to what Joseph Campbell was looking for. He said that there's one monolith, there's one great story, the story of the hero. We, of course, we explore it most commonly in the media through Luke Skywalker, who, of course, is George Lucas. And George Lucas is telling the story of his relationship with his father. His father wants him to go into mainstream corporate America. And George Lucas wants to explore the galaxy. But he comes to face his father, which is, of course, Darth Vader. And he finds that if he kills his father, if he becomes part of that establishment, he becomes, Darth Vader himself. Mm-hmm. And we saw that in the second Star Wars movie. But it all goes back.
I find it very interesting. Right now, I don't know if you subscribe to Netflix, but right now they just released a series called Myths and Monsters, and the very first episode is all about the hero's journey. I happened to have stumbled upon it last night. I thought it was very interesting how that went. So you're talking, Bertie, if I'm hearing you correctly, you're saying that in modern times we're looking, places like Star Wars in order to see the hero's journey. Where else do we see that, and who are its supporters?
Well, we see it throughout all literature, throughout all time. Tolkien's Lord of the Rings, Frodo takes a journey. He picks up a band of characters. He has the help of wizards. He faces himself, which is Golem. The monster Golem. If he kills Golem, who's trying to kill him, he becomes Golem because he's fighting over the ring. At the end, towards the end of his journey, Frodo climbs the cosmic mountain, I believe it's Mordor, to throw the ring into the fires so that no one could use it for evil purposes. It's a common theme. Dorothy leaves she leaves Kansas. Dreams to go to a magical place, and that is, of course, Oz. And in Oz, she has the help of magical of witches. She has companions, the lion, the Tin Man, that help her on her journey, as well as the Scarecrow. This monomyth is told through all peoples, through all time. So I hypothesized at some point that in this process of learning about the animals, that people must have taken this. If the monomyth is as Campbell says, of all people of all time, it should go back to at least 40,000 years ago when we have that first cave art. And you've got an image that the viewers can see for the gallery of discs. And if you could pop that up now. Can they see it?
Yeah, it's up.
Okay, great. This is in the El Castillo Cave, which dates to 40,000 years ago. Well, that panel dates to 34,000 years ago. And as you look at that panel, the first thing, Bernard, what do you see when you look at that panel?
Well, I noticed the red dots that are along the center of it. And I
discs.
see it looks like a bird beak or something in the middle there.
That's good. That's excellent. That's excellent. So what you're doing is you're drawn toward those red dots.
Yeah.
Just as you're drawn toward red lipstick or a red stop sign or a McDonald's or a DQ sign. You might not stop at those places, but the signs bring you there. Well, millions of people in the popular science and scientific literature have seen that same image of the gallery of discs. It's about 10 meters across and maybe about 80 or 90 or so discs. When we look more deeply into that image, we can flip the slide to El Castillo elephant.
Got it.
Okay. Now what do you see, Bernard?
Well, now I see the elephant.
Now see this. So what you're seeing is now the elephant in the room, aren't you?
Yes. So that's a part of the original, the red disc.
Yes.
Okay, so you don't see that at first. I see what you're saying now.
So Bernard, why didn't you see the elephants at first?
If I'm not mistaken, it's just a matter of the way that the images are turned.
Part of it is that we're drawn to the red. It's hypnotic. Someone created an image 34,000 years ago that hid the elephant in the room.
Ah, I see. Okay.
By our minds being drawn to the red disc. Isn't that incredible?
That's pretty wild, yes. Very interesting.
Now, and there's not just one elephant. There's two. There's an elephant in distress with the ear raised as well as the trunk raised, kind of sort of horizontally. And when you flip it 90 degrees, the trunk is down and the ear is down. So online now you're looking at two elephants made from the same trunk and ear.
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing.
It is amazing. Now, I'm guessing they did this intentionally to...
So what they did is that they're creating characters in a story. We have an elephant that's the one with the ears, with the trunk down is drinking or walking towards water. And then in the water, the elephant becomes distressed by raising the trunk.
I see, okay.
There are actually two more elephants built within the same ears and trunks, but we won't see them today. So what we're seeing is a story that goes back very long, very deep in time. There are human characters in there as well, and the human character we can pull it up it's swimmer. It's the You see him?
Yep.
Okay, he's swimming sort of on top of the elephant, and we can see he's swimming the crawl or the freestyle. Well, he's swimming between the African elephant, between the Spanish animals on one side, and the African elements on the other end of the screen, the other end of the panel. Right. So we have a person who's taking a journey, and he's swimming. He's taking a journey across water, and I would suggest that journey across water is the Strait of Gibraltar, and he's also taking a journey to a magical place. Just as Dorothy goes to Oz, Frodo goes into Mordor, and Luke goes to another planet,
right,
or goes to many other planets, and that's all part of the hero's journey. And that story is within us. It goes back for a very long period of time. Now let's pop up to do one more slide, which is the red-haired man.
Got him.
Okay, so now what we have is an Orion-looking character, a man holding a club, for the people who can't see the image. And he has red hair, and and he's sort of leaping into the sky, and he's at the African side of the image. So we have a man that swam from Spain, what is now Spain, across Strait of Gibraltar, and is now in Africa. And it's an amazing scene, because this becomes one of the oldest images of man in history, and there's, other than the other ones that are on this panel. But what we see, though, is a part of this journey, and the character turns out to be Orion.
Okay.
He becomes the constellation of Orion, because you're looking south down the image, and there's a bunch of animals on that same panel. And we could drop down to another core image, which is Castillo giraffe.
There we go. Okay.
So now we're looking at, for the people who can't see the actual image, we're looking. There's a stream of red discs that flow across the image, this 10-meter panel, and the artist uses the red discs to form the molded pattern for the neck of the mother giraffe.
Yeah.
And the young giraffe is sort of behind her, and the neck wraps around the mother giraffe, and the juvenile giraffe's head tucks in under the mother's head. So this becomes an African scene in a Spanish cave. And so just as Luke Skywalker went into the bar and saw all these magnificent creatures in the first Star Wars episode, the Paleolithic artist is taking us to a faraway place that is unimaginable to someone who's living in Spain at that time.
Yeah, actually, I would wonder if you could perhaps describe for us a little bit more in clarity as far as the time and the place of these drawings. This is Castillo, Spain. Whereabout is that? Is that southern Spain?
This is in the north of Spain, near Bilbao, in the Cantabria region. So we're almost into France.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, this is far north Spain.
So this is suggesting that 34,000 years ago there were people perhaps doing that, as we are calling it, the hero's journey across the Strait of Gibraltar into Africa and coming back and creating these images to show everybody else.
Well, and they were telling the story.
Right.
They were telling a story, and that's classic of the hero's journey. Now, it's important that this concept of telling the story, because right now we've seen a swimmer and we've seen a man lifting his club. We're going to pop up to another slide, which is Castillo, teacher and apprentice.
Okay, got it.
Okay. And now what we're looking at to the viewers, who people can't see this, is to the viewer's right, there is a man who has his mouth open, and he's speaking into the ear of the apprentice to the viewer's left, who's a young boy. Can you see that, Bernard?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. And so we have someone sharing a story.
Right.
So one of the earliest images in the history of man is about sharing a story. How do you feel about that, Bernard?
That's pretty fascinating, and well, I love it. It's fantastic.
So here's what it gets interesting. It's an older man and it's a younger boy, and the boy has the sense of amazement on his face. Mm-hmm. And again, going back to this, millions of people have seen this image, millions, but didn't see the elephants, the giraffe, or any of these characters, and especially this man, older man, and the young boy. And I would suggest that the young boy is the initiate apprentice.
Right.
And man becomes what we would call a wizard, a shaman, a spiritual leader. He's the one. He's the elder. He's the archetypal character who leads on the way. And of course, it's that's Gandalf in the Lord of the Rings. It's Yoda and Obi-Wan in Luke Skywalker in Star Wars.
Right.
Now, kind of stepping back on this for a second, going back to Star Wars, I think is really important, is George Lucas studied the hero's journey monomyth.
Yeah.
And he built the movie based on that. And in the movie, Luke goes into the cave, and Yoda says to him, "The only thing you take into the cave is yourself." Okay, and that actually goes back further than Star Wars and Joseph Campbell, who it went back to Carl Jung.
Yes.
Carl Jung, in his dream, he steps into an older house. And as he walks down the hallway, the plaster starts coming off. But he realizes it's not the same plaster as the house he stepped into it. And he realizes that this is the plaster from ancient times, or ancient Greece or Rome. And he goes further down the hallway, he steps into a cave. And so he's in a dream. And reflecting on that dream, he said that in the cave I discovered remains of a primitive culture that is the world of the primitive man within myself. So as we step into this Paleolithic cave, and we see the boy who's hearing the story of the journey, we're traveling from Spain into Africa, we're taking a journey within ourselves that we've been taking for at least 34,000 years. We retain we can recognize the archetypal characters of the old man and the boy, because that's retained within us. We recognize he's swimming from one place to another as part of the journey. We recognize that there are two different continents, that it's you going from one place of normality to the magical place of another. So these are all part of this. We're seeing all the components of the hero's journey, but we're seeing them, the character, we see human characters, but we're running across animal characters.
.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
We are on a commercial break. We'll be right back. Hold that thought. And welcome back to the Just Bernard Show here on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, and now also at revolution.radio. I love it. Great job, guys. I love it. Anyway, we are the #1 listener-supported radio station in the world. If you are on the website there, please go ahead and make a little donation to support the Revolution Radio Network and all of the dozens of shows that we play for you throughout the week. As well, please take a moment and support this particular show, the Just Bernard Show, and you can do that by becoming a patron of the show. If you become a patron of the show for as little as $2, you will receive rewards. People who donate $20 a month get listed in the credits of every one of the shows on YouTube and everywhere else that I post a video, or you can just make a small donation at bernardalvarez.com. This radio show does need your support. We are getting ready to celebrate 10 years. Can you believe this? I've been doing this for 10 years. Anyway, we really need your help, guys, right now. So if you can, please make a small donation at bernardalvarez.com or become a monthly patron at patreon.com/bernardalvarez. And now let's return to our conversation before Orion with Bernie J. Taylor. Now, before the break, Bernie, you were telling us about, well, we were basically talking a bit about the common, well, for lack of a better term, the common archetypes that we all know about, that we all can align with, that we all feel within us, for lack of a better term, and the dream that Carl Jung had of going into that cave. Do you remember where we were with that?
Absolutely. So Carl Jung has the dream in the cave, and from that dream, he then goes on to read books about mythology, and feverishly read the books about mythology. And then he recognizes that the world of the past, what people were the stories they told then, the myths that they were telling then, are still present with us today. Not just in the way that the stories are told with the heroes and the villains and the monsters, but also in the interrelationships. What the myths tell us about ourselves, because the myths are all they're educational, but they're educational when you listen to the myths. We're going to pop up another slide now, which is a Castillo speckled mare. And this image is at the Spanish side of the cave where there were horses, and the speckled part of it is that those red discs that run down the center line of the cave become the speckles on the breast of the horse.
Yeah, look at that. That's wild.
Okay. Now, what's important about this image is that it's a horse, and the horse is an archetypal symbol of deliverance. Bellerophon rides Pegasus to fight the monster Chimera. In the Abrahamic tradition, Muhammad flies the horse into the great beyond on his journey. Abraham flies the same horse between his mistress and his wife, and one wife becomes the mother of Judaism, and the mistress becomes the mother of Islam. Mm-hmm. So this concept of the mare and the horse is common throughout ancient times. The flying horse is also common in the Siberian shamanic record. And young women, when they ride horses, they feel that power within them, and often have a luminous or numinous type of experience. So if you have a horse, you really need to have a rider. So we're going to pop up the slide, Castillo Cosmic Man.
Yep.
Okay. As we pop up the Castillo Cosmic Man, we can see he's behind the horse. You can find the horse again. He's riding the horse. The Cosmic Man is.
Yeah.
And in his left hand, if you can look at his left hand, it is it's feathered. It's like the wing of an eagle. And that would then become the wing on the horse. So the man and the horse become one. If you look at the raised right hand of the Cosmic Man, he's holding an egg.
Yeah. Likely
an eagle's egg. And he's masked. What on the viewer's left side of the mask, is an eagle's beak that comes out.
Yeah.
And on the viewer's right side, you can see the eye. And below the mask, you see sort of the mouth sort of coming out at the bottom. So this is the man behind the mask who has that transition from a human to spiritually becoming an eagle to take the flight on the horse.
Right.
Okay. Now this is where it all ties back to the Greeks and the Romans and the Egyptians and everybody else and hunter-gatherers all around the world. We said that this Cosmic Man is to the north, as is the horse, and on the other end of the panel is the Orion character with the red hair who's rising into the sky. Well, this panel is a zoo, okay, and as you go along, after you leave, so we have the man, we have the horse, we have the eagle. As you go along this panel, there's a dolphin. There's a seal monk. I'm sorry, a monk seal. There's a monk seal, and there's a lion at the top of the image, as well as a Barbary macaw, which is an 8. In the constellation record, the Cosmic Man becomes Hercules. Yeah. The horse becomes Pegasus. The eagle is Aegea. The dolphin is Pisces. The monk seal is Cetus. We move on to Orion, and at the top of the image is the Barbary macaw, which is Gemini, and then the lion is Leo. So what the artist, this is not just a journey, a terrestrial journey. The artist is telling a journey on the earth and in the night sky.
Yeah.
So what is above is below in the Hermetic tradition.
Yeah.
And it goes back to this image. And we're still telling these stories. We still have these archetypal characters. Luke doesn't ride the horse. He rides the land speeder. He rides spaceships.
Right.
And we've taken the same archetypal vehicles for discovery that we've had in ourselves from the Paleolithic past. So what is above is below, and the myths are told through the night skies, and myths are passed through the seasons of the night sky as constellations and stars, projecting man's psyche into the cosmos. Characters that are light years from Earth, but still within the grasp of the human imagination. In the Greek and the Roman record, as well as hunter-gatherers around the world, they tell their stories of myths of characters in the night skies. And that tradition, I would suggest, goes back 40,000 years ago in the Gallery of Discs. So this becomes the source book for all the great myths, all the great stories, that monomyth that Joseph Campbell was looking for.
And I find that, again, I keep having these little aha moments as I'm listening to you speak and looking at these images. I mean, we're talking 40,000 years ago, and just incorporating the theory of Carl Jung's collective unconsciousness, and how, all these images, not only are they being reflected in the artwork, like you said, they're being reflected in the sky, as well as the story of the hero being played out over and over. I mean, throughout all mythology. I'm thinking of it's Christmas time. I'm thinking about Jesus, who disappears at 13, comes back, and he's a healer, at 30 or whatever. And then, of course, we go through the whole resurrection thing. And then even, and how that story overlays into the Mithras story, and so on and so forth. How all of these stories are basically an inert expression of who we are as human beings, and the human condition. I dare to say.
Exactly. We can't say that this is the original story, but what we can say that this is the root of the stories that we have come to know, because people left this part of Africa and this part of Europe to travel around the world. These are the roots. And I believe that the Greeks and the Egyptians traveled into these caves and they saw these images. And from them, they found the archetypal characters. And they created new myths and new stories, or created many stories from the same images. So the story is amazing, and this is the these archetypal characters. But we can go back to the first slide that we picked up. We don't have to go back to the slide, but consider. You have these red discs streaming across the cave wall. Millions of people have seen this in the popular media. Millions. Everybody covered this thing. But we missed what was truly behind it. We couldn't see the forest through the trees. Mm-hmm. So if we couldn't see the forest through the trees of all these characters that are about ourselves, what are the many other things that we miss normally in our lives that we just can't imagine that they could be there? Did I just blow your mind, Bernard?
I'm sitting here doing an inventory. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4. No, and not to distract from this concept, but I'm just wondering, how large are these caves? As I'm looking at the slide, how big is the scene that we're looking at?
10 meters across. That's panels. So the giraffe is life size.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
So 10 meters, what's that, about
30 feet.
30 feet or so, yeah.
Pretty amazing.
That is pretty amazing. And to think that, well, and that's what I find so interesting, is that even 40,000 years ago, people were doing their best to, communicate through imagery, through archetypes that everyone could understand. Perhaps that was, the beginning of a certain, I don't want to say the beginning of language, but a part of the process of evolving language was using archetypal images to communicate stories and or concepts, ideas.
And we retain that so when Jung went into the cave that is his mind, he went into the collective unconscious. He went deep into the memories of mankind, and he came out with an idea that we can only see today. that you and I can only see today. He hypothesized this almost 100 years ago. But we only can now say that Jung was right on. It's a fascinating concept. We're almost reliving past lives, not as past people per se, or but rather as we're playing out roles that had been played before.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Especially when we're looking at, and I forgot what they were. There's like 9 or 10 steps to the hero's journey, and just thinking back even to, let's say, Greek mythology, I can't help but think of Persephone and the underworld, Persephone and Demeter going into that journey into the underworld and then coming back up, getting the wisdom, well, I don't know if you want to call it the wisdom from Hades, and then returning and being reborn, so to speak. But we all seem to go through that, even in our daily lives, through the trials, the tribulations, the victories, the losses, and whatnot. We get to that place where we become out of our element, we become uncomfortable, and it shakes our reality. And then we have to, well, just like the story says, we find teachers, helpers, and those who aid us to, return to full form, and then it creates a whole new reality for us.
Yeah, it's an amazing concept, and man projects himself into the cosmos. And I say man, that means men and women. It's all people. We project our psyche onto the cosmos. We find animals and people in the stars that really aren't there. We find animals in geological formations. A mountain might look like a horse. We find bunnies and elephants in the clouds. We have an incredible imagination, and these people 40,000 years ago had the same imagination, and they captured it for us on the Paleolithic walls. And this becomes it's a time capsule. It's the source book, and we look at religion. Or the spirituality in our modern sense, and we look at the mythology of people around the world, we can trace it back to this core root. These people were animists. They believed that the mountains were spirits, as well as the rivers and the trees. They believed that animals could talk, or at least they could understand what the animals were saying. These were the people very similar to Native Americans before Europeans arrived.
Right.
This is the core. This is the core. This is the core of who we are. And the man who has the winged man, the cosmic man who we saw earlier, who's masked, he becomes the angel. The angel for Abrahamic people. Right. The angel Gabriel met Muhammad in a cave and gave him wisdom, shared his wisdom. The angel Gabriel nurtured Abraham in a cave as well. Jesus dies, is set into a cave, and is arisen from the cave. Yep. So this cave is not the angel in the cave. Is an archetypal character that is not just passed down through the stories, but it's within us. We carry this in our being. It's you can look all around the world and see hunter-gatherers and people of ancient traditions with bird suits of some sort. And in the artwork, we carry these characters within us. It's who we are. We can never escape it. What we have is. Yeah.
I'm connecting another dot. I have to share that. I'm connecting another dot. Whereas when I went through my shamanic training, the visualization that we were told to use when we were doing the vision quest was that if we couldn't physically go into a cave, to visualize ourselves going into a hole into the earth. And then and allowing the journey to begin from there. So again, very symbolic to what you're saying. And also,
because you only take yourself into the cave, as Yoda said.
Yes, exactly. I have a question for you in reference to the book, Bernie. Why did you name the book "Finding the Face of the Hero" before Orion? What does that mean?
Well, before Orion is a metaphor, meaning from before the Greeks.
Ah, okay. Okay.
And so it's a metaphor. And then finding the face of the hero is we're seeking the hero through this book. And this is not a scientific book, of course. Well, actually, it's as scientific as Jung is scientific, right?
Right.
And Joseph Campbell is scientific. But it's not. This is not a biology book or anything like that. It has a lot of cosmology as well as astronomy, because that's how people told stories in the night skies.
Right.
But finding the face of the hero is the journey that we take, that all the heroes take to find ourselves. And today you've had a lot of shamanic training, and you came to face the red discs on the wall, and you looked at the images, and you didn't see the elephant in the room. You didn't see the man with the raised club, the horse, the speckled mare,
Right.
And the many other characters. And the book was designed that the reader takes that journey within themselves. And I've had people cry after they read the first chapter. I've got people I've never met send me multi-page emails, and they're expressing that something from themselves that the hero takes when the hero comes to face the self.
Yeah, it's almost like well, as my guide said on my vision quest, was to remove the veil to see the true reality. And in order to do that, we do have to go within ourselves. We can't just use our senses. We have to feel versus think, if that makes sense.
Exactly. You have to you have to feel your way into the collective unconscious, to these past places. Can you imagine an apprentice 40,000 years ago walking into this dark cave? He's all pumped up. He's ready to become the next spiritual leader or the shaman. He stands before this panel of discs, and the candle is raised up. And the teacher asks him, "What do you see?"
Right.
And he starts counting the red discs. And then the teacher asks him again, "What do you see within yourself? What do the eyes tell you?" And I gave you the answers on this program, but if your entire life was determined on whether you could see beyond the red discs, not even recognizing there was something beyond the red discs, you probably went into some deep state of despair. And in that state of despair, you might have gone to ground zero. And then, as you rose, you might have seen deeper than the red discs. And I believe that was part of the journey of the apprentice. And the continuing journey is, of course, that the apprentice learns all the constellations of the night sky. And as the animals are reflected on terra firma, on Earth, and then the initiate takes that journey, not just in the mind, but also walks across down south into the Strait of Gibraltar, swims across, and travels into North Africa. And maybe in another program we can talk about what he's really going to, what is the end of the journey, what is that final place that he visits in North Africa. But that's another show, isn't it?
Right. Yeah, that's a whole other couple hours. And again, as you're saying that, I'm thinking that very thing of, once we get to that place, it just opens up a whole another journey. The journey never truly ends. It's just, I guess, it's one chapter. A great example is, was it the Iliad or the Odyssey? I forgot, where just even returning home, Homer's, met up with all these different witches and dragons and, cyclopses and whatnot. It's one thing after another, one thing after another. So all these little mini hero journeys are going on during your entire hero's journey within this lifetime.
Correct.
And so, yeah, it is very interesting what would happen once he does get to Africa. What is the rest of the journey? But there is no rest of the journey because it keeps going on.
Oh, there's definitely, the journey continues in Africa, and that's another part of the story. And I believe that is what he encounters in Africa is the most important part of the story. But that's another show.
I was going to say
we only have 7 minutes left.
I was going to say, do you want to give us a hint?
Well, we'll have to cover that on another show. We only have 7 minutes left.
Right. That sounds good. That sounds good. And
but there's a place. There's a place that all initiates travel to, and all the great prophets have traveled to. They all go to the same place, and it's not just within themselves. It's not just within themselves to face their fears. There's a specific place they all go, and this Paleolithic initiate, goes to that same place.
So we have this journey's been going on for quite a while.
Correct.
Obviously, yeah.
It's within ourselves. The journey is within us.
Absolutely, and the hero is us, and I think that's probably the most important takeaway that people need to realize is that we are the hero, and we just we need to embrace that aspect of ourselves.
We have to come to face our fears, and then we become the hero. And through that facing our fears, we have a profound change in life. And we can, in this case today, we looked at the red discs. We didn't see something, but something millions of other people haven't seen. And through that recognition, we can now look at the world differently. We can see there's multiple perspectives. There's no one true reality. And that's what we learned today.
That's definitely the truth, and I thank you for that. So tell us, where can people find the book and learn more about your work, Bernie?
Sure. The book is available in all ebook formats, Kindle, Amazon, Nook. Everybody has it. And so it's a major color work in an ebook format, which is great because you can zoom in and out of the images. I recommend that people don't skip pages because it is written as a journey.
Right.
And you can also find my work at beforeorion.com, which is my webpage. On Facebook, Before Orion, Instagram, Before Orion, and follow me on Twitter at Bernie Taylor OR. And I also use hashtag Before Orion.
Wonderful. Well, I thank you so much for joining us, everyone. Next week, we will be having Neil Gard joining us. We're going to be talking UFO disclosure. We'll see you then. Have a wonderful week, everyone. I love you. Thank you for joining us. Bye-bye.